We had a quick snafu, life happens, and so does technology. So my name is Sharon. I am the founder and executive producer for Baltimore Fashion Week. But I don't know which side you're looking at this on, but to my right, oh, it'll be my left one here, I have Allison Tolman, who is the vice president of collections. So before you all say, "Oh my God, what is she? Do people owe her money?" No, she is the vice president of costume collections. And Allison's job or responsibility or tasks of many is to search the universe especially for the spectrum of fashion, is to search the universe for Maryland-based designers, old and new and present. So Allison, thank you for being here. We
Thank
got
you
it
for
to work. I'm so excited.
I'm so excited that we were.
Amen.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Oh, you're welcome. So I love that. I love the lab coat. So tell us a little bit about yourself, and then let's just jump right into it.
Great. So as you said, I'm the vice president of collections here, and that means that basically it's my job to take care of and to showcase our collection at the Maryland Historical Society. We have 300,000 objects, so it's a lot to take care of and to show. And of that, about 12,000 are our fashion archives or garments and accessories about Maryland history.
Oh
so
my God.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
It's a lot. And the spectrum of fashion, we're having this exhibit to celebrate our fashion collection, because for a long time it wasn't used. It was kind of put away and it left in storage for a long time because it's really difficult to show clothing. So for the past 10 years, and especially the last 5, we've been working to revitalize this collection and to find all the different Maryland stories, hidden designers, hidden Maryland wearers. And we're putting on this exhibit, opens October 5th, to celebrate all of our discoveries and to showcase some great Maryland designers from the past and today.
So with all of the garments that you had in your storage, what was the driving point to make this come to life, to actually introduce spectrum of fashion to people?
Well, we kind of started doing it on our own because a lot of us were fashion historians or fashion historian. It was our favorite collection that we really wanted to, bring it out and to revitalize it. And it was during this process when we were going through old records and we were bringing in costume historians. They were like, that your collection rivals the Met. I mean, the depth of this collection, the couture that we have, and then the rare examples of like extant pieces that do not survive, like painted dresses from the 18th century. No one else has this, not only in Maryland, but most of the nation. You need to celebrate this collection. And so that was really the catalyst. And we've developed it further into celebrating how Maryland is still so relevant in fashion now. So we're kind of bringing it as a history museum. We're always trying to be relevant. And so we're bringing the conversation of important Marylanders with fashion through today.
That is such a huge, for you to say, mention the Met Gala. I'm sorry, the Metropolitan Art Museum. It is just amazing because when can I mention your PR firm?
Sure.
Or the person I've been dealing with?
Yeah, okay. Absolutely.
Okay, great. So when Lauren called me, I was like, "Oh, hi." And we talked about it, and the first thing that came to mind to me was the museum in New York, and then The Last Emperor, which is the documentary on Valentino, which is so awesome. And that's the only vision I had in mind of the spectrum of fashion, and I'm so glad that you touched on that, because that's why my big cheesy grin came up. I just love clothes. I love history of fashion, and I'm so happy that this is being brought to Baltimore, although it's a celebration for all of Maryland, but it's here in Baltimore. So how hard is it, or was it, because it's coming in a couple of months, how hard or complicated was it to actually keep the garments that you found with a historical presence or flair vibrant so that they could be in the exhibit?
Well, we were really fortunate when we kind of opened these boxes that hadn't been touched in decades. They were really well preserved. I mean, they were the colors that would come out of these like cardboard boxes were just so vibrant. We were absolutely astounded. And we have a team that does the conservation and does all of the vacuuming, steaming, and the padding and everything on the forms to help get these costumes ready. And we have a fundraiser called Adopt a Mannequin. And we've actually had a lot of people. We've had 55 adoptions. People coming in and connecting with different dresses or different Marylanders, different designers. And they'll come and they'll give us, it's $1,000. So sometimes even it's a group of people get together and they adopt a mannequin, and that pays for us to do all the conservation, buy the form, get it dressed and ready for the show. It's definitely a labor of love, but we were happy to do it because we think it's such a cool story to tell.
Well, the both of us collectively know all about labors of love.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us a little bit about the team that you have or the staff that you have that actually work with you day to day, or are you a solo person? Do you do all this by yourself, or is there a team? I know Lauren is a huge part of this because she connected us, but for those who may think that if you're a solo, that's awesome, but if you're a team, would you like to talk about them and then we can jump into the collections?
Sure. We do have a team here at the Maryland Historical Society. Our whole staff is maybe 30 some people. So we are a big museum. It's a whole city block. So big museum, big collection, tiny staff. For this collection in particular, I have one full-time person dedicated. We do use some contractors. So our exhibit designer, our graphic designer, Chuck Mack is the exhibit designer, and Sally Comport of Art at Large is our graphics designer. We've had fabricators. Everything is really done by contractors. We have a small exhibit team, but a lot of the work for this exhibit, the discovery of the fashion and everything like that, is part of an internship that we run every summer. So we have 3 interns come in every summer, and they're either interested in conservation or they're interested in fashion history. And they pull the objects out of their old storage, they research them, they vacuum them, they make them look really nice, put them in their new housing and put them away, and then they digitize it. This stuff was put away in the 70s. There's no way to digitally track in the 70s.
Right.
So they're really helping us because now I can, if I want to know how many Dior pieces I have, I can just put into my system Dior, and then it'll pop out how many I have, and that gives me a place to start. So it's really the interns that do the big chunk of work that helped create this exhibit. Putting it on now, we have a very small team, but it was really all the interns of the past and present that have really done a lot of the work.
So what type of obstacles have you encountered or had to overcome when you go into storage, you pull out a garment, you open it up, you're really excited to see it, and then when you open it, it may not be at the type of form that you need it to be a part of this installation, but you know that this is a key piece. How do you handle that?
It's a lot. Yeah, it's a lot of work. Sadly, there were some pieces that we wanted to put in the show that we couldn't. The 18th century painted silk that I talked about, it's so fragile, and because of like the organic dyes, it's the favorite of pests. So even before it came to us, it had suffered a lot of damage to the point where it won't even take a needle. So we can't do this. We can't put it on a form. It will risk this object, and we might lose it. So instead, what we can do is we can, digitize it, we can rehouse it and preserve it for study purposes, because as an archive, we're an educational tool for a lot of people. So we keep that and use it in a different way, but it doesn't work for the exhibit. For a lot of pieces, though, we are able to do the conservation, or we have 2 consultants who are conservators who do the conservation, and we have to do a lot of work as far as dressing them. We can't buy historical forms. It just doesn't exist. So we have to buy modern mannequins, and then we have to carve them down. So, 19th century, everybody likes really curved shoulders. They don't have big broad shoulders like I have. And so we have to carve them all down, and then we'll have to pad them back up. So also mannequins, you can't buy a mannequin with an ampere waist. So they all have the natural waist, but if I need a tiny ampere waist, I have to carve down the mannequin by hand and then I'll pat it so it looks kind of the shape that we need it. So each form only works for the dress that is on it. We can't like swap them around. It's catered to.
Wow.
It's a lot of work.
So we have a question from our watching audience, and the question is, Allison, what is your favorite fashion era?
It changes all the time. I always go back to the 1810s, but that's because I have read Jane Austen too many times. I wear a lot of 1950s. So I don't have a favorite, because when I start researching this summer, our interns were really into the 1890s. And I was like, ooh, I sort of love the 1890s this year. So it really changes, because we always fall in love with the objects that we're working on, and it can really affect our favorites.
So with this love that you develop as you're working on an object, do you find yourself going out to shop for, or trying to mimic the object that you just discovered? It's like, oh, I need to have something like that in my wardrobe. And do you find yourself doing that a lot?
A lot, especially with 1950s, because I'm a very tall person, and my job requires me not just to sit at a desk, but I have to get up. Sometimes I have to move furniture if it's going on display, or climb up on the platform. Okay. So it was hard for me to find in modern wear like a skirt that went past my knees and wasn't a pencil skirt. So when I started wearing vintage, I was like, oh, nice dresses that go down to my knee and actually I can move in. So I sort of fell in love with vintage in that it heard me when our modern market didn't. So I emulate that a lot.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. I'm assuming that shopping in a various era that's in the past may be kind of difficult to find. Probably online. Do you shop online a lot to find what you need?
I do. I use Etsy a lot, but Baltimore does have a really great and growing vintage market. In fact, as part of our exhibit, we're having an opening gala that features a fashion show. And in that,
I'm sorry, I got excited.
The fashion show has a lot of amazing contemporary Baltimore designers like Fashionably who's over here. But we also are letting vintage dealers walk historic looks. Because, we can't let people wear our clothing from the museum collection, but we can have vintage boutiques walk historic looks, because, people can wear their clothing. So it's a really great way to show how fashion back then and fashion today looks.
So before I go completely insane, are you telling me that at the gala there will be a live installation of various eras of fashion? Is that what you're telling me?
Absolutely. So our fashion show is going to be something that you will see nowhere else. We have contemporary designers doing capsule collections. We have vintage dealers who are walking historic looks. And then we also have about 12 designers who have actually come into our storage, looked at some of our pieces, and are making unique pieces that are inspired by our collection.
That is awesome.
It's going to be a lot. There's going to be the past, there's going to be the present, there's going to be something very arty and very new based on our collection. It'll be really fun, really dynamic.
So I have a few. I have the Artist Exchange here from Baltimore. I have Linger Magazine that's out of Boston, and then I have For Humanities out of California, and they're all here. They're really excited. I'm excited over the fashion portion, walking the looks. Oh, I love it. So tell us a little bit about the garments behind you. What is that item on the top? Is that a garment? No, on the behind all of the clothes. It looks like a roll.
You're seeing our storage. So we are behind the scenes right now. This is our textile storage. So you'll see we have racks that have garments hanging as well as boxed, because some garments are too weak to be hung. So we put them in large archival boxes. And then we even have some quilts, if you can see them as well, rolled, because that's another large collection. So we have lots of textiles in here.
So for the garments that are too fragile to go on a mannequin, has it ever been a time where the thought or the idea surfaced to actually put them in a glass display in the box? So at least the visitors of the Maryland Historical Society could see it?
Yeah, the earliest piece in the collection is actually it's a wedding apron from 1724.
Oh, wow.
And we've had it. A conservator actually carefully mounted it to a board, and we're going to have that on display as that because it can't be worn. The silk is just too fragile to kind of have that cinched waist you would with an apron. So we're going to display it flat, and so that people can still experience it, though not necessarily on a form.
Okay, so I have another question came up from the Artist Exchange radio show, and the question was: is there a market for plus size men and women in vintage? Since you're the queen, I bow down to you. I can't wait for this show, but I'm bowing for the queen of fashion. That is you. You are our Miranda. I bow.
Okay.
Do you think that there is a niche or a space or an allotment or availability for plus size men and women in vintage? I know for me, I'm a size 14. So there's a vintage store around the corner, and I won't mention your name because I don't want to steal from your shine, but I love their style. I love their clothes. Now, can I fit their clothes? Some of them, no. But I still love to support. So how do you feel about that?
It's definitely tough. And, you know, a lot of the reason that small vintage survives is because not a lot of people could wear it. I mean, I have trouble because I can't find vintage that fits me. So I can understand that it is a difficult thing. There are a lot of companies now that are trying to make, you know, having more body inclusivity. And I think that making vintage styles that are contemporary, but they have the same aesthetic is getting a lot of people ground. I mean, one of the reasons that we feature Christian Siriano, this piece is from his 10th anniversary collection. And one of the reasons that we love Christian Siriano, not just because he is a Baltimore boy, he went to the BSA, we love that, but he also is really big on body positivity and inclusivity. And we really felt like representing him, and as he is kind of pushing the boundaries, you know, he was one of the first people to advocate for inclusivity on the runway. It's why we love representing him in our collection, because everything he represents, things that we look to as well.
Yes. So let's talk about the collection. That's a great segue into the collection behind you. Let's talk about the garments behind you.
Okay, I don't know how many you can see. I have a lot of garments behind me, but most closely behind me, the purple gown is by Bishmi Cromartie. And the pink and red, as I talked about, is by Christian Siriano. So the exhibit is going to feature, we call it the spectrum of fashion because spectrum means range. So we're going to show a range of colors, or a spectrum of colors, a spectrum of time, a spectrum of economic class. And then at the very end of the exhibit, we're going to talk about how Baltimore was Maryland, but Baltimore specifically, was always prominent in fashion history, and that there are still people today, Maryland designers, contemporary designers, who are keeping Baltimore in the conversation when it comes to fashion. And so that's where we highlight designers such as Christian Siriano and Bishmi Cromartie. They are both, like I said, this is from the 10th anniversary collection, so 2018, Christian Siriano. The piece from Bishmi is from 2009, and it came in a really pivotal point in his story, which is why we love it. It's when he was, you know, thinking about, does he give up because he doesn't get into the school he wants, and then suddenly he finds out he gets Project Runway, he gets an L spread in L Vietnam, and so this really represents a pinnacle in his career. So both of these pieces are really important because it talks about how Baltimore is still in the fashion story, and we always have been. Like we were a big fashion port. We had Hutzlers. Clair McArdle is Frederick, Maryland, and she invented the ballet flat. I mean, among many other things, but people don't give Maryland the credit it should when it comes to fashion.
They don't. We're here to make sure that happens. We're here to make sure. So could you scooch, I like to say scooch, could you scooch over just a little bit so they can see the yellow? Oh, look at that jacket, ladies. I mean, the coat, look at the yellow mustard coat. Isn't that awesome? So can you talk a little bit about the yellow coat as well as my favorite blue dress that I know I can't fit, but let's talk about it anyway.
Well, not many people can fit in either of those. Both of those belong to the Duchess of Windsor, Wallis Simpson. So, and you can actually see next to the yellow, that cream color dress is also the Duchess of Windsor. So we found a lot of unheard or unfamous not famous Marylanders when we were discovering our collection. But then we also have some, classic famous Baltimore people, including Wallace Simpson. The blue piece is from the 1960s, and she had it Madame Grey make it for her. Madame Grey was more famous for her Grecian style drapery in the 40s, but this is obviously a big departure from that. But the Duchess of Windsor was going to Thailand, and she wanted a crop top and a straight skirt, and when the Duchess of Windsor asks you to make that, you make it. And behind that, you'll see it's a Dior gown. And she had Roger Vivier shoes too. So she was always dressed in the best.
We have another question from Linger Magazine. Do you find that certain eras focused on particular colors during their time?
Yes and no. It's dependent on dye. So for example, there was a very long time when they couldn't figure out how to make a stable green dye. They would layer blue and yellow, but then without fail, the yellow would fade and the dress becomes blue. Suddenly you don't have a green dress. So they don't use it a lot, or it doesn't survive at least. But then all of a sudden they create this green. It was actually made with arsenic and made a lot of people ill and killed some people, but it was a stable green dye. So then there's this big flurry in the late 19th century for this acid green dye. So definitely there's things like that. There's certainly trends. There's a lot of trends in patterns, like big florals in the 18th century. If I scoot this way, you can see here. This is 18th century silk. The dress was made in the 1840s, but the silk itself is from the 1740s. So they had it's got this huge floral design. So there's a lot of patterns that come and go, floral especially. But there's also colors kind of, depending on availability mostly.
So when you do your search process, like me, I use Google, but I'm quite sure with the type of an in-depth level of search that you use to research this fashion history, how do you do that? Do you use Nexus? Like, how do you achieve that? Without spilling any privatized secrets.
No, I mean, it's a long process you get to know a dress like you get to know a person. If you know what you're looking for, and because when we clean garments especially, we are looking at, maybe a square inch at a time, we can really get to know the dress. You can kind of read it like a document. So I can look at a dress and I can see they've dropped the hem 5 inches. So this person got taller, or it was worn by something else. We have a cape worn by Frances Cleveland. She married Grover Cleveland, the president. And I can see that the bust had to be increased and that they let out the waist because she wore it when she was pregnant. So a lot of it you can get just by looking at the garment and then looking into the person who wore it, because the history of the person and the history of the garment are so intertwined. And that's why we love clothing, because it's a great way to talk about history, because you can see the person standing in front of you. So a lot of it is that. We also use firsthand or primary sources. They had fashion magazines even in the 19th century. They were leather-bound books, but they were counted. Godey's Lady Book is really great because, if we can find that original material, they're like, silk gauze was very popular this year. A young girl looked so pretty in silk gauze, that kind of thing. So we get a little bit of fashion history just from reading primary sources.
So have you, although these, like you just said that that you can look at a garment and pretty much you become one with the garment and you can understand the garment. Now this might sound kind of eerie, but I have to ask because I'm different like that. When you're working on a garment, do you sometimes, or are you able to detect the spirit that might have embodied that garment before it came to you? I'm not trying to sound creepy, and I hope I'm not creeping anybody out, but I'm curious to know if you've ever experienced that.
It is a very intimate thing when you're looking at someone's clothing, especially at the detail that we look at clothing. And I will say that we do get a kinship with them, and you can kind of sense the energy. You know, when I'm dressing something, I call it by the name of the wearer. So like we have this, one of the things we're showcasing is the B&O Railroad had police officers. So we have like this B&O Railroad uniform, and he has a little tie clip that looks like a train, and his name was John Heavner. And so when I have to move his form in storage, I'm like, John, come on, move a lot. Move along. So there is a little bit of that where we kind of, you get just an idea of the person's energy. And because you do spend, like, it's a very intimate thing. If you can imagine someone looking at your clothing that you have worn, looking at the seamstress and looking at how you've changed it, or stains, even stains, you're like, oh, this is your wedding dress and somebody spilled wine on it.
Oh, wow, that's so awesome. That is so cool. So you mentioned that you resize, or not resize, you reshape mannequins or dress forms. Well, mannequins. What do you do when you have the mannequins left over, and do you discard them after the exhibit, or do you just keep them in storage with the rest of the garments?
So we keep them because we can always carve more. Like if it doesn't fit the next dress, carve again. And because some silhouettes, you know, we can often recycle. We have a Civil War exhibition, and I can recycle those forms because they all had the same aesthetic. They're all looking at the same and making themselves look to the same aesthetic because they're all reading the same material. So though sometimes we have to change the waist or the bust, we can often keep a form going on for some time. We don't ever get rid of them because there's always something that you can use it for.
So how many do you have in house?
Form? I think so. We have about 100 pieces in this exhibit, and that's about how many forms I have. I'm using every spare form to do this exhibition.
This is so awesome. Is there anything you'd like to share that I haven't already asked? The questions, they're coming in. Well, they're not coming in now, but they will. I asked that already. So do you have anything you'd like to share with us?
Well, we open October 5th. So that's it. The exhibit will be up for a year. But the gala, which tickets are on sale now, we only have a limited number. That is the night of October 5th. It's from 7 until midnight. Like I said, amazing fashion show. There's also going to be some fare there, some food, and there's going to be special guest Christian Siriano. So there's an opportunity to meet him. He is going to actually MC our fashion show.
Oh, and nice.
Yeah, it's a great opportunity to see some Baltimore designers who you may not see. You know, we a lot of great local names who are going to be in that show.
Okay, that's that. I will be there. I will be there.
Great.
I'm going to purchase my ticket as soon as we're done. I don't know what I'm going to wear yet, but I have a little bit of time, so I can figure that out. I know plenty of designers; they can figure that out for me. But I will definitely be there. So for individuals like myself who are coming, what would you recommend, or how would you recommend that we dress?
So we said black tie or fashionably chic.
Oh,
we kind of leave it open.
Okay.
I talk to a lot of people, and some want to dress on theme, and I was like, well, the theme is spectrum of fashion is celebrating diversity and color, time, and economic class. So wear whatever you want, kind of thing. Like pick a bold color, do something like that, something fun.
Okay, so I promise I'll try not to come in black. I'll try to do a pop of something. I'll figure it out.
We have a section on black because that is a recurring color. Granted, I mean, for a lot of the 19th century, it was mostly for mourning, unless it was a very shiny black. But we do have a section on that as well.
So speaking of color, do you find yourself sometimes, because I probably would, do you find yourself sometimes when you see people dressed in certain colors, do you go into curator or costume collection mode and start dissecting the fibers that the garments are made out of?
Yeah, you can't help it.
You're like the fiber police.
Well, it's just so ingrained in you. And there's some things that people think that are just not true, like wool. People will see wool and they'll say, that is a winter. Why are you wearing that in the summer? It's like, well, actually,
They do have
wool
a
is a very breathable fiber.
Mhm.
It's what they wore in the summer. You know, silk
Mhm.
is a windbreak. Like, you don't want to wear that because you're going to roast inside.
Yes, yes.
A little bit. I try not to.
So we have another question from the Artist Exchange radio show. What things could a newbie look for when shopping vintage to avoid paying more for something that isn't authentic or not as valuable?
First, if you're shopping vintage, know your measurements, because don't waste your money buying
Yeah.
something when you don't know your measurements. And that includes knowing where your waist sits.
Yeah.
Because I have definitely made the mistake of buying something and the waist is not, because I'm a tall person, it sits higher than my natural waist, and I just can't wear it. As far as knowing what something is worth, there's definitely some things out there where people will try and say that they are vintage, you know, something that is more valuable than it is. And it's something we're always on the watch out for. But you just really have to know what you're looking at. Just because something says that it has that, if they show the tag that says that this is a specific designer, do some research, do some looking online, see if you can find an ad for what that dress looked like. There should be an ad for that dress to show you if it is true or not. But you do have to do your research. If something is really expensive, it doesn't mean it's good. I found a lot of my favorite pieces are some really amazing pieces for not a lot of money.
Oh, okay.
Go to store in person, because your vintage dealers are not going to do you wrong if you go in person.
Okay.
You talk to them, tell them what you like, and get to know them. They are going to help you find what you want. If you do it online, it's a lot harder because you're just dealing with someone who doesn't know you or anything about you.
So how do you handle that when you go shopping and someone tells the vintage queen you are, that they tell you that this is vintage? How do you handle that when it's you being the person purchasing the garment?
When I purchase things, sorry, you cut out for a minute. So I know what I'm looking at. So I will contact the seller and I will say, could you show me this detail? And that tells me a lot because, yeah, so one of my favorite designers is Clair McArdle. She's a Maryland girl, born in Frederick, though New York will claim her because she went to Parsons and that's, where she sold her garments, but she's a Maryland girl. So, but she is great because she did a lot of innovations. She believed, a feminist in her own time, she believed everyone, for women, their zipper should be on the side because a woman should be able to dress herself. And I know that she put pockets in every single dress, deep pockets, because she thought that men, didn't have the problem with their hands. And if she was uncomfortable and didn't know what to do with her hands, she could put them in her pockets. So I know what to look for when I'm looking for a McArdle. So I will say, let me see where the zipper is, or can you show me a detail of the pocket? There's certain ways that I can identify it as a true McArdle and not, because McArdle will go now maybe $400 or $500, if not more. Yeah, and people will just have like a label and sew it onto something. So you have to be, if you want couture vintage, you have to be careful. But if you know what you're looking for and you can talk to the person and get them to show you details, you can really make sure you know what you're buying.
So speaking of couture, how many vintage pieces will you or could be in the exhibit?
We have a lot of couture in the exhibit, and then a lot of pieces that aren't. We have some pieces that are handmade. We're showing the diversity of the collection.
Right.
So I don't have a number off the top of my head. We have Pierre Cardin, we have the House of Worth, we have the Jacques Doucet from around 1900. So Lottie Barton, who dresses presidents' wives, we have her. She's another Baltimore girl. If anyone knows where Soda Sopra is, or on Calvert or Charles Street, that was her space. That building was where Lottie Barton had a place in the late 19th century.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So Givenchy is behind me and Madame Gray. So we have a lot of couture, but then we do show some pieces that are more important because of the stories. So we have both.
So do you have anything you like to share with us, me? Because I'm intrigued. I'm just like, in overload here in fashion. With the individuals who are my listening audience or watching audience, do you have anything you'd like to share with them?
Nothing important beyond what we've talked about. You know, like I said, this exhibit, it features 100 Maryland stories. So I could talk about it for hours because each garment represents a person. And so each garment represents a unique Maryland story. And it's stuff that we don't get to talk about otherwise. I mean, we all have favorite stories. My favorite is we have this dress. It's an opera dress, and from 1915. And you see this woman and you think, wow, glamour, crazy, singer. It is the last time she ever sings on stage. And after that, she joins the suffragist movement. And she, she donates this and she goes and she starts marching and picketing Washington. She actually gets thrown into a workhouse with deplorable conditions, and they make them wear really awful clothes. And she goes on a transcontinental trip on a train and wears the awful, dirty clothes that she had to wear in the working house as a testament to what they were doing to women at that time. So she's known. She's in the Baltimore Sun writing letters to the editor talking about this. And then in our collection, we have the last thing she wore before she kind of gives up the life and goes and becomes a suffragist. It's such a great juxtaposition, and we can only tell it through this clothing.
That is awesome.
It's neat, right? There's so many stories that we could talk about.
Like, how do you sleep at night? It's so exciting. I don't know how you can sleep at night. I would always be working. You have a unique position.
It's difficult. Yeah, we're so excited for the show. It's been in the process for a long time. We've been working full out for 2 years, but the idea came in the head of my predecessor 10 years ago. So this has been a dream of a lot of ours for a long time, and we're so excited to finally get to share it with everyone else.
So this is the first time that this has ever happened at the Maryland Historical Society.
Yes, this is the first time we've had a full-scale costume exhibit that just celebrates the collection. We had an exhibit in '98 about Clair McArdle, and before that, it was like the 70s. Back in the 70s, we did all kinds of costume exhibits, but they were all small. They were actually in rooms of our old historic house, the Pratt House. And so they all did little themes, like they would have a 20s room, and in it they would have a bathtub for the bathtub gin and bottles on the floor. And at the time, they could only afford department store mannequins. So there'd be dresses on department store mannequins, and like they would have one like leaning back as if she was drunk because it's the 20s. Okay. And so that was really the last time, the heyday of costume exhibits. We've come a long way. We're really conscious now about the conservation and preservation of the objects, and we're celebrating them in a new way.
This has been, I'm just so excited right now. You have well, maybe you do have an idea, but it's just, this has been really, I'm so glad. I can't even complete a sentence. I'm so excited, but I'm so glad that Lauren reached out to me. This is so awesome.
We're so glad that we were able to
tell Lauren to show her face. Tell Lauren, we need to see her.
Can you see me?
Hi, Lauren.
Hi.
Well, she has my LBD, little black dress.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm quite sure you probably have a lot to do today. If not, we'll keep talking. I'm really, really excited for the exhibit. I'm happy that it's happening here in Baltimore. I'm so excited. I'm gonna have to see if a few of my friends from New York and Boston will come down. That'll be so cool. And we go to the Gala and hang out. That'll be cool.
A lot of great Baltimore designers are there. We've got, Bishmi, I keep doing the wrong side, Bishmi Kamardi will be there. But we also have, Jill Andrews, Jody Davis, Chris Schaefer, Ella Pritzker. There's a ton of Maryland designers represented who are going to be in this fashion show. It's going to be a great opportunity to see how great Baltimore is when it comes to fashion.
That's going to be so awesome. So Magazine said they're here. They're coming.
Oh, great.
It's going to be awesome. So tell us one more time before we end where people can find you, the website to the Maryland Historical Society, and also how they can get tickets to the Gala on October 5th.
Yeah, you can call to get tickets, or you can go to our website, which is www.mdhs.org. That's MD as in Maryland, HS.org. And October 5th is the big night, but the exhibit will be up for a year. So you're more than welcome to come in and check out the exhibit from October 5th, 2019 through 2020.
And what are the hours at the Historical Society?
I think they're 10 to 5.
Okay, great.
And we're closed on Mondays and Tuesdays.
Oh, you're closed on Mondays and Tuesdays?
Yeah, those are our working days, yeah.
So it was such a pleasure and such a learning experience to have you on and interview with. This is our second episode and I'm just so glad that this took place, and I can't wait to share it with everybody. And I just want to thank you for your time, your knowledge, your experience, and your exposure. This has been really, really good, and I truly appreciate you, Allison.
I appreciate you. Thank you so much for having me on.
You're welcome.
To talk about this, it's a passion for me, so I'm so happy that I got the opportunity to talk with you.
Well, if you ever want to come back to talk about anything else the Maryland Historical Society is doing, just drop me an email and we can make it happen.
Fantastic. If you ever have any fashion history questions, come to me.
I will. Lauren, ask Allison this.
She will. She'll send it along, and I'll let you know.
Okay. All right. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you. It's so great to talk.
Thank you. Have a great evening, a great afternoon.
Yeah.
So, ladies and gentlemen, excuse me, I'm like, and this is all without coffee. So that was Allison Tolman and her fabulous, fabulous self. She is definitely the fashion everything for Baltimore. Forget what you heard. I'm letting you know now that Allison is it. I bow down to her. She is the Miranda Priestley of Baltimore. I'm sorry. She is. She's it. So I'm Sharon Nixon, founder and executive producer for Baltimore Fashion Week. Baltimore Fashion Week is next week. It starts Monday, August the 5th, all the way through Sunday, August the 11th. This has been so awesome. Monday, we have Monday night at the movies at the Parkway on North and Charles. Tuesday, Jenna Blaha from Elle Magazine will be here, and she'll be here for luncheon at Fogo de Chao. Thursday, we have the industry party. You don't want to miss that. Fogo de Chao is bringing the culinary experience of your life to the industry party, and DJ Derek is the virtual DJ, right? So awesome. And then Friday is our meet and greet at On the Border Cantina Mexican Cantina and Grill. Oh, well, it's in Canton. So go to the website, www.baltimore-fashionweek.com. Saturday is our fashion show where we have 6 designers showcasing. 3 are from showcasing, doing a preview of their collection that will be displayed in New York on September the 6th, and Sunday is the finale. I am so excited for Baltimore Fashion Week. I'm super duper excited for the Maryland Historical Society and their gala on the 5th. Get your tickets. I'm going to be there. You all need to be there. So come on, come to Baltimore, have some fun. So I'll talk to you soon. Bye.